What makes an entrepreneur unique?
Drive to achieve something, whether that's to build a business, to make more money, to make your mark, or it could be the drive just to live the life you want
Mhm.
on your terms.
Welcome, Third Rock listeners, to the Branding Laboratory. I'm your host, Deevo, Chief Experience Officer for the Brand Storyteller and the Fusion Creative Brands. And each week, I have the privilege of speaking with extraordinary leaders and entrepreneurs who are reshaping the way industries work. These conversations go way beyond the surface to explore the core philosophies, the lessons, and the challenges that define the brands that we admire today. And one of the greatest rewards of this podcast is the opportunity to share the insights of some of the brightest minds in business, people who are passionate about pushing boundaries and redefining what's possible. And as I always say, the stories we tell are the brands we build. And this show is a testament to the power of that concept. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Branding Laboratory, a podcast where branding isn't something you just slap a label on it. It's something you become. It's something you live. It's something that tells your customer who you are and what you do. I'm Deevo, and in every single episode, I'm going to sit down with founders, creators, and leaders who are doing something rare, telling the truth about who they are, what they do, and how they're building their brand that actually means something. Today's guest is no exception. Liz Steblay is known by many as the Yoda of solopreneur success. She's the founder of Pika and Proko Agency, a best-selling author, and someone who has spent her entire career helping others ditch the corporate grind and build something of their own on their own terms. My kind of woman. Let's not waste any time. Let's get into what actually matters and welcome Liz to the show. Talk to me. What do you do? What is Pika? What you're an author, you're a keynote speaker, you're helping people get out of the corporate grind. Share some insights with me.
Yeah, wow, all those things. It sounds like I'm really busy. But yes, actually, I am the Pied Piper of solopreneur success, actually. So tons of people, especially since COVID, have been reevaluating their lives and thinking, man, I want to get off of this corporate grind. I don't want to go back to commuting to the office all the time, or maybe now is the chance for me to strike out on my own and become a fractional leader or an independent consultant or a coach or whatever the word is that people are looking for, but they want to be self-employed. And now is the world is changing, and now is the time. Companies are getting used to hiring part-time talent, interim leaders, fractional leaders, more consultants on freelance basis. And so if you were ever thinking about making the leap to being self-employed, now is the time, and I have the resources to help, whether it's through the book or my coaching through the educational organization Pika or whatever. Where do you want to take the
What does
conversation?
Pika stand for?
It stands for the Professional Independent Consultants of America.
Okay.
17 syllables, way too many.
Why was COVID a catalyst for everybody sort of looking at their life and being like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore?
It was pivotal because we realized that we can be effective in our jobs without being in the office.
Being effective in a corporation doesn't always translate to being a successful entrepreneur.
That is
So,
very true.
so I'm curious. In fact, I think 78.9% of corporate corporate individuals who launch their own business fail their own business. That's a large number. So why was COVID a catalyst for telling people that, hey, I should start my own business now, even though they could have had ample opportunities in a variety of other sundries?
There was a realization that happened on the macroeconomic level
Mm,
that corporations realized that they might not need full-time talent. They might
mm,
not need full-time employees, and they might not need people in the office every day.
mhm,
The whole world got used to getting work done remotely.
mm,
And so now that the corporations realized, oh, well, maybe we can hire the talent we need, even though we're based in Seattle, but this person who is really the expert is in Boise, Idaho. We don't have to move them to Seattle. Maybe we can just hire them on a fractional or part-time basis or as a consultant. They
mm,
don't need to physically be here. So that was one side. It opened up demand
mm,
for self-employed talent, but also individuals started reevaluating their lives when they stopped commuting and dealing with all the wasted time in the office setting. They started reevaluating their lives and thinking, wow, what if I didn't spend 10 hours a week commuting? That's 10 hours that I
Mhm.
have been spending with my kids or walking my dog more or exercising more or learning to play golf better or coaching Little League. Whatever people did with that extra commute time, and they realized maybe I don't really want to be stuck in that grind working for the man anymore.
I wonder what makes entrepreneurs different from people who are in the corporation. Let's just on a baseline level, what makes an entrepreneur unique?
Drive to achieve something, whether that's to build a business, to make more money, to make your mark, or it could be the drive just to live the life you want
Mhm.
on your terms.
That's the part that where I was going with my question because I sort of struggle with that whole idea that COVID had to be the catalyst, and I'm not demeaning the system or the way that it worked. I think it's great. I think there should be more entrepreneurs. I personally think that corporations are getting too large. That's a different conversation. But I always wonder why you didn't do it sooner. Like, did you not see the writing on the wall on the fourth time you were laid off, or the fourth, like, did you not see the writing on the wall when you sat in meaningless, mindless, mind skull meetings for 8 hours a day, sitting in a cubicle? Did you not sort of like
Yes.
ask yourself, dude, is there something more I could be doing right now? Like I just sort of like when people, and again, please hear me out. I'm not knocking the system. I'm not disparaging how it works. I'm just curious the whole psychology around what makes somebody finally see the writing on the wall and be like, this might be my jump. Or was it just sort of like a bandwagon effect and they saw other people doing it, they're like, well, maybe I could do that as well.
There's some of that too.
Yeah, and I
Yes.
wonder how many of those people, and I've not seen data on this, I should probably do research this. How many of those people who used COVID as the catalyst for jump into an entrepreneurial world are still alive in the entrepreneurial world? I'm just curious to see what that number looks like, or how many went back to work. Do you have any idea
Yeah,
on
it's
that?
very, very hard to get to that kind of number. But the applications for tax ID numbers did spike after COVID.
Hmm. Hmm.
So when you're self-employed, you want to have an independent tax ID number, an EIN, and not use your social security number. So that is one measurement,
Hmm.
is that there were more filings for tax ID numbers. Now the problem is you don't renew a tax ID number, so there's no way to judge if all of those are still in use, other than digging into the IRS archives, I guess, and who's filing tax returns. I don't
Mm.
know.
We should do some
Uh,
research on that. We should collaborate and find out that data.
But I'll
So
tell you, in the thousands of people that I have coached, very few bounce back to full-time jobs.
that's great. Well, that's a testimony to you, I would imagine, to some extent. Yeah.
Well, I think maybe part of maybe because I tell people before you make the leap to being self-employed, be very clear on why you're doing it. What do you want out of it? How is this going to change your life? How is this going to change your cash flow, your income, your health, your relationships, your stress level? You have to think about all of those things.
Can I
And
add to that list?
absolutely.
What are you giving to the ethos of the world by this entrepreneurial spirit that you're starting? Like, what is it that's going to make you uniquely qualified to deliver some solution to the rest of the world who's or a partition of the world is going to be buying from you? What is that product? What problem does it solve? And how can you uniquely put yourself in a position so that you're different from all the other people doing the exact same thing in the marketplace, that sea of sameness?
So I call that narrowing your niche. This
Hmm.
is one of the keys to success is to be memorable.
Hmm.
But to be memorable, you have to have a niche. You have to be
Hmm.
known for something. You have to have a brand, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of people think that when they make the leap to being self-employed, that they should be a jack of all trades or a Jill of all skills because then they'll be open to more opportunities.
Hmm.
But the reverse is true. If you put yourself in your client's shoes, they want to hire an expert. They don't want to hire a jack of all trades or somebody who maybe could do it or has maybe done it before. They want to hire the person who does exactly what they need fixed or whatever the opportunity is that they need to seize. They want the person that's going to be able to do that.
Can I play devil's advocate with you on that for a second?
Uh-huh, yeah.
So I don't necessarily agree with you. I think that you can create your own niche. And I guess in a sense, it is still niching down because you're creating your own niche, but you're independently finding some void, some problem, and delivering some solution based upon your zone of genius. And that doesn't always mean, in my opinion, that you can exclusively only build X or only do Y. I think you can be a very successful generalist, and I'm proof of that, and cater to a very large audience if you can identify the problems that you can solve and then solve those very specifically for the type of individual, not necessarily the industry, not necessarily the niche, but the individual or individuals that you really want to work with. Case in point, I'm a consultant and a coach. I work with small business owners, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, corporate executives. I work with a wide variety in very generalist field. I have orthodontia and healthcare and chiropractors and business coaches and yogis. These are all in my client list. But at the end of the day, what I'm solving for them is I created a pocket in my own world to enable them to better tell their story. And so I guess we're sort of saying the same thing, but I don't niche down in the sense of just an industry. Does that make sense? I niche down into, and then not all my clients need the same thing. So some need content, some need brand messaging, some need clarity, some need marketing, some need website development, some need everything. So my job is to sort of find out who you are and meet you where you are, then deliver the most optimal solution to you. And
But
you
your
may,
niche is more around the branding and the marketing and not around an industry. A niche doesn't need to be around an industry.
okay, fair enough. We can agree
It
on
can
that.
be
I just
around a skill set.
definitely cool. All right, we're on the same page then. Just wanted to make sure.
Sometimes industry is important, but
Oh yeah.
oftentimes it doesn't.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a time and a place for it niching down. And again, my industry and my zone of genius to me is relatively unique in what I do, but I do think there's a time and a place for it. So anyhow, let's get on to the another thing. Enough about me. Who are you? At the end of the day, who are you? What do you do? How did you get into this space? Were you always an entrepreneur? When did you start these businesses? Give me a 15,000 altitude check-in on who is, and is your Steblay? Is that how you say your last name?
Steblay.
Steblay. Okay, I like that better.
Steblay.
I knew I was butchering it.
No worries.
Steblay. All right.
Steblay.
Tell me who Liz Steblay is.
So my career was a more of a jigsaw puzzle than a ladder.
Mm,
And it wasn't until I was in my 50s that I realized that all of these different puzzle pieces that I had turned over by hopscotching all these different jobs,
mm,
it wasn't until I was in my 50s that it made any sense.
mm,
And then the picture started coming together. Oh, that's why I started to have that job where I was selling insurance. Or that's where that I had when I did that job where I was coding HTML before any of the web development tools existed. That's why I had that stint in marketing. And at the time, I didn't know. I had no plan. Like kids now always think they need to have a career
mm.
purpose. I'm like, God, no. I didn't figure it out till I was in my 50s what
I tell that to
my
my daughter
purpose
every
was.
day. Yeah, literally every day I tell my
I
daughter.
just did what sounded interesting, where I thought I could learn and make a difference and grow and have some fun. And then when I was in my 50s, I realized, oh my gosh, people need help with starting and launching their own businesses.
Mhm.
And that's when it all came together for me. So when I oh my gosh, I'm not going to start at the very beginning, but I did fall into being self-employed when I got laid off from a job. That very same day, I called a former consulting client because I used to work for a global consulting firm. And I said, I just got laid off. Do you need any help? And he said, how soon can you get here? So I had my first consulting client before I ever even had a laptop. I didn't even have a laptop. Like within a week, I had my first contract. And that first year, I made more money, worked fewer hours, had more quality time with my kid, didn't have to deal with all the big firm BS. And I said, that's it. I'm never going back to a traditional job. And I figured it out. So that was over 20 years ago. I made a ton of mistakes, learned a lot. And then about 5 years after that, I started my first company, which is called the Proko Agency, which is really how I make my living. And that's a national agency that represents independent consultants with Fortune 500 companies. But then as a result of growing that into a multi-million-dollar company, I was getting asked out to coffee a lot because people had questions about being self-employed.
Mm,
How do I get started? Do I need an LLC? How do I figure out my pricing? And I started getting the same questions over and over again. And I thought there's got to be a better way to help
mm,
more people than drinking a lot of coffee. So
mm,
that's why I created the Professional Independent Consultants of America,
mm.
PICA.
I love how you saw a need and filled that gap. So I don't, I want to go back to what you said at the outset of the conversation, this accumulation of all these different experiences and how you reverse engineered that to create a solution uniquely qualified for other people that may or may not be self-aware to sort of see that there's an accrual of experiences that could potentially lead somewhere. I think a lot of people sort of feel like they get stuck in the corporation, if you will, going back to that
Yes.
original conversation, because they don't take the time to have some introspection around what zone of genius could they potentially actually deliver to the world outside of just sitting in a cubicle doing something for someone else all day long? So it's
Hmm.
really cool. It's really admirable. And when I asked what are some qualifying things that separate entrepreneurs from corporate executives or corporate employees, that is one of them. Self-awareness is sort of having an understanding and being able to be introspective and look at yourself and realize, there might be something bigger to all these things I've done. So, um,
100%. Yes.
so
Introspection.
sorry, let's back up. Proko agency. Tell me what that is, just so we have some clarity on that.
Yes. So the Proko agency was modeled after Creative Artists Agency in Hollywood.
Uh-huh.
So where the best actors are represented by talent agents, the best consultants are also represented by agents. And not always, but it's
Hmm.
helpful. And so that's what the Proko agency does is we screen and vet our consultants. There's a very rigorous process. We reject more than we accept. Um, and we handle their contracts and help them win work with Fortune 500 companies.
In a fractional role.
More like consulting basis.
Huh. What's
Sometimes some fractional work, but more of it's consulting, problem solving, or specific objectives and milestones and timelines, right? Like I just yesterday finished a contract for somebody and it's going to go, they structured it for the first 12 weeks for phase one.
hmm,
And they're going to achieve a certain number of things for phase one. And then they're going to look at phase two.
hmm.
So more of a consulting structure than an interim role or fractional roles, although we do that, we're doing more of that than we used to, I should say.
There seems to be
But
a large shift towards fractional right now, actually.
there is, and that's
Yeah.
again part of that COVID shift because
Hmm.
companies are realizing, hey, there's more talent out there that we can hire. We don't have to hire somebody full time,
Hmm.
particularly for small to mid-sized businesses or rapidly growing businesses. There's always the problem of cash flow versus hiring the talent you need. And it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg problem. And by finding the right fractional leader, you you can balance the cash and investment with the payoff.
Can we speak to that a little bit? Just the ROI around that. I don't know that everyone's clear on A, what a fractional is versus a consultant, and B, what are some of the advantages of hiring in a fractional capacity versus hiring in a full-time capacity? And while I can be blue in the face and explain it, I think sometimes having a different perspective and a different lens on it might make sense. So, in your estimate, if you were talking to a corporation right now and you had an ideal candidate, let's say me, that was a potential candidate for their job, but they were also considering bringing in a whole team of people. Why would it make more sense for a corporation to go fractional or consultant versus hiring a full-time individual or a team of individuals?
Speed and flexibility are the two biggest ones. Uh, now, you asked me a lot of questions there all at once. So let's unpack
At
this a
the end of
little
the day,
bit.
why would a company hire a fractional or a consultant versus hiring a full-time FTE onto their
So let's
payroll?
just go with that. So regardless of the type of shape of the work, speed, because for one, if you're going to hire somebody full time, it takes a long time to get through to find the right candidates, to
Mm.
get through the vetting, yeah, not the vetting, but the interviewing process, because it's
There's
more
vetting,
like,
definitely vetting
yes, like interviewing, but
for
it's
sure.
more
Yeah.
like a dating to marriage, right?
Hmm.
Like, because when you hire somebody, that's a commitment that they're going to be with you for years,
Yeah.
ideally, right? So it's a lot longer runway. Like takes a
Mm.
lot more time to get there. With a consultant, because there isn't that whole, it's a contract base, and you can really let a consultant go at any time, depending
Hmm.
on the contract. But most contracts, some will say 2 weeks notice or whatever. But for the most part, it's a lot faster to
Got
find
it.
the person you need, onboard them, and 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 get to work. The other is so that goes to the speed and the flexibility. Flexibility piece is that you can scale up or down with non-full-time talent. So let's say that you're doing a new product launch and you know that you're going to need marketing help, for the 9 months leading up to that launch, and it's going to be super crunch time the month before and the month after that launch. And then things might taper off into more of a steady state, and you can ramp up and down the amount of help that you need. And the third thing, which just popped into my mind, of course, is the expense.
Mm.
Now,
That was actually the first thing that popped into my mind was the expense
yes,
actually.
well, there's a trade-off here, right? So, yes, consulting or fractional talent is expensive, particularly if you look at it by the hour. But if you're only buying the time you need, it's not a fully loaded salary with benefits and um, bonuses.
Oh yeah, I actually sorry, I was leaning more towards that. It's more expensive to hire a full-time FTE than it would be a
Yes,
fractional or a consultant because, as you said, it's either a marriage or in our case, if you're hiring me, you can just have a little tryst with me instead of fully
exactly.
committing out to me. So and that gives us, and if you're a consultant or a coach, that gives you both flexibility because in my opinion, not just the coaching or the expense and all those really cool variables that you just said, but it also gives a good opportunity for you to get to know that individual, sort of vet them in a live, in living color capacity, especially if you're just doing them for small gigs at a time. You don't have the commitment to it. You don't have the overhead to it. You don't have to all of the human resource parameters that have to go through. So yeah,
You can try before you buy. Absolutely.
100%, 100%.
You did ask me also the difference between consultant and fractional leader or fractional executive. And one key difference is duration.
Yeah.
So when you're hiring a fractional head of marketing for 1 day a week, uh, and that person probably has 3 or 4 different clients, right? But when you're hiring that person 1 day a week, they're a member of your leadership team and they're there for the long run. There's no distinct end date.
Hmm.
They become part of the fabric of your leadership team
Hmm.
on an ongoing basis. And so then they get more involved and they're more invested in the success of the business and the culture, and right, it's more part of a team, whereas a consultant is not necessarily as invested.
I have two fractional roles that I play right now, and so I fully agree with that. And I'm basically all hands on deck for anything branding, marketing, and actually some of the operational stuff now with this business. And from my perspective, I really enjoy that. I love sort of marrying into an organization in that capacity because it still gives me the freedom and autonomy to kind of run my own life and run my own business. But it is a much larger commitment. I will definitely
Yes.
acknowledge. In terms of, and I'm just speaking specifically at Proko because you said, this is like your moneymaker. And you said multi-million, so you must be doing really well with this. Phenomenal idea, by the way. You're sort of like a matchmaker headhunter all wrapped up in one, right?
Yes.
At the end of the day, what's the problem you say you're solving?
That business is a two-sided market. The consultants we represent are one set of customers for us, and then our corporate clients are another side of the market. And so there's two different value propositions. For the consultants, we help them find work and also handle their contract and administration and compliance so they can focus on the work that they love.
Hmm.
They love solving the problems and doing the consulting. They don't love dealing with insurance and getting writers, getting
Hmm.
people added to their clients added to the insurance writers, or they don't like dealing with the compliance or the billing or the invoicing or all of the red tape.
Hmm.
So that's the value proposition on the client side. On the corporation side, it's similar, but slightly different. We mitigate their risk for hiring somebody as hiring an independent consultants. Ever since Microsoft was sued in the late 90s and settled that lawsuit for $97 million or something, companies are afraid to hire independents because they feel like there's a risk of misclassification, that they
Hmm.
should have been hired as an employee, but they were hired as an independent contractor, and then there's a lawsuit, and then there's a class action lawsuit, and companies are very scared about that. So the Proko agency mitigates the risk for those companies. We accept that risk.
What sort of liability overhead do you have to carry for something like that? I would imagine a lot.
We carry a shit ton of
I would imagine. I
insurance.
was like, I'm in the middle of I just launched my first retreat that is in November. Shameless plug. Please check it out, the Alchemist Retreat. And I was talking to my insurance company the other day, and they're like, you need this, and you're like this. And I was like, ah,
Yes,
so
I
crazy.
think we carry 7 different types of insurance, and yeah, that's the biggest one.
I used to
It's
run
an administrative nightmare.
I'm here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And when I first moved to Charlotte, I had a small company that I was sort of doing as a hobbyist out in California. I play men's soccer, and there wasn't really a very large soccer organization for adults here in Charlotte when I came here. So I started a small company called Carolina Sport and Social, and what we did is we organized adult sports leagues around Charlotte for adults. And then it started off with soccer, men, women, and then it was co-ed. Then we blew into like different sports, more social, dodgeball, cornhole, all these different things. Anyway, I'm an early entrepreneur at this stage, relatively early, and I got a phone call from one of the players that was in the league, and he was asking me, he's like, "What kind of liability insurance do you guys carry for this?" And I was like, "We have a lot. we have a lot. I was like,
And
no
then
idea
you
what you're talking
then you
about. Yeah.
figured it out, right?
Yeah, so I quickly just called I actually started off with my car insurance company. And I was like, just blind question. I have no idea where to begin with this. Could somebody just sort this out for me? And they're like, oh, you need to talk to such and such. So yeah, we were quickly covered, but I had no idea. And this kind of goes back to the value that you bring to the table. There are so many steps to launching a business. There are so many things so this is for Pika. There are so many things that you have to do that you just don't have the slightest idea about, from LLCs to legal coverage to contracts to the emails to just like the system to the workflow. And I think a lot of people, and this is my estimate, why so many entrepreneurs fail is they don't realize how much operational and systemization things go into running a business. My brother, he's a lawyer, and one time he just like half-heartedly said to me, man, you have the life. You basically, this is when I was just doing photography at the time. And he's like, man, you have the life. You just work on weekends, you get to travel around the world. I was like, dude, do you know how many hours I put in during Monday through Friday before I even get to the photo shoot? Like, just because I'm an entrepreneur does not mean I'm sitting on my ass watching TV all day long, just waiting for something to happen. Like, all day long, I'm dealing with stuff. So, and you said something earlier, because I want to tap into your brain for a minute. You said when you left corporate that you found that you had more freedom and more autonomy and more time on your hands. And I was like, girlfriend, what were you doing? Because when I first joined the entrepreneurial world, I was buried. And it wasn't until I started to figure out systems and hiring people and like organizing and getting legal insurance that I was finally able to find some freedom and time. So I wish you were around 20 years ago. Anyway.
Well, I did fall into it accidentally, right? I wasn't, it wasn't planned. It wasn't a strategic move. It was a gut reaction. I just got laid off. I'm like, oh, well, look, I don't know, I'll call Rob. Maybe he needs some help.
Mm.
And so it was literally just divine intervention or whatever you call it that I ended up consulting for a major uh, Fortune 500 company, tech company in Silicon Valley. And over the years, I ended up doing 12 projects for them. And my projects used to range anywhere from 6 months to 18 months. So they became like one of my key anchor tenants. Like if I was a shopping mall,
Hmm.
that client was my Macy's. And then I had other clients as well. But I wasn't consciously trying to build a business that first year. I was just delivering the work. I was just doing my consulting work. And then, but this is the biggest mistake. I got caught flat-footed. I realized a month before that contract was going to end, I had nothing else lined up. I hadn't done any business development, hadn't done any branding, I hadn't done anything except serve this client, which I did very well. But I was going to be out of work and unemployed in a month. And in that same year, I had gotten divorced. So now I was a part-time single mom and I had no safety net. It was like, holy crap, what am I going to do? So I figured it out. Well, I'll tell you what I did is I interviewed with boutique companies, boutique firms all around San Francisco Bay Area, and I discovered that they were going to keep 35% of what they billed me at. Okay, fine. But I did the math, and in my type of work, let's say average project 9 months, 40 hours a week was full-time work. A company was going to make $45,000 simply by introducing me to a client.
It's amazing.
And I said, hell no, I'm not giving up 45 grand. I'm going to find my own work. And I just started hustling. I reached out to people I knew. I started calling people. I started saying, hey, I left my job at Levi's and now I'm doing independent consulting. And do you have any help? Do you have somebody and have any help to keep me in mind? I mean, I just started pounding the pavement.
Mm.
Not not literally, but I made a
Metaphorically.
lot of phone
I think
calls.
we know that saying by now that it's metaphorical.
Okay. But
I think most
anyway,
people do.
this was 20 years ago, so things were different then.
I still pound the pavement. I don't go door to door, but I sort of see, I try to be a regular attendee at gatherings of people where I know entrepreneurs are going to be. And
Yes.
I went to an event last night that had no business being there. It was an exit strategy, a group of attorneys and whatnot. But I've already set up 2 coffee calls from just hanging out with these people and just, I don't
Well,
know. I think if
that's
you
the
just have a conversation with people, just like be genuinely
interested.
interested. Yeah, be genuinely interested and just listen to people. And there's so
The,
much you can pick up.
the trick is that you have to make yourself do it when you are fully employed,
Hmm.
fully self-employed, right?
For
So
sure.
the type of consulting work I did, full-time work, sometimes the 50, even 60 hours a week if it was a peak period.
Hmm.
But you can't not do business development even in those busy times. And
Yeah.
I I created a mantra for myself. It was one person in person once a week. So at least once a week, I'm going to meet somebody in person and have a conversation. Sometimes that was literally just asking someone on the client team, hey, do you want to walk down to Subway together and get our
Mm,
lunch today? We don't
I
have
like
time
that.
to actually eat lunch out, but
Hmm.
let's walk together. And on that walk to and from to get our food, I wasn't talking about work. I was asking them about their family and how did they get into this work and what do they do when they're not working and where did they go to school and what are their favorite sports teams and do they have any pets? And I was building a relationship.
Mm.
And I did that one person in person once a week for, I don't know, I was going to say decades, but it then did shift with COVID because I couldn't meet people in person. But then I was doing virtual cocktails
Mm.
and I still do virtual cocktails.
I'm always fascinated how founders sort of find their pockets of where they can build a business or build an idea or develop something, and this zone of genius. And you're focusing exclusively on solopreneurs. Is that sort of the space that you're operating in exclusively?
Yes, that's what I do now. In
Yeah.
fact, I don't even, we talked a little bit about the Proko agency.
Uh-huh.
I've promoted myself to CEO. I am not involved in the day-to-day operations of that business
Fair
anymore
enough.
because now my passion is helping people to create the career of their dreams to live the life they want.
That is the end game for all entrepreneurs, I would think, is to promote yourself out of the space so that you're not caught up in the day-to-day minutia, right?
Yes, it was hard, but it's possible. And I still get sucked in. I ended up reviewing a contract last night because the
Hmm.
president was unavailable, so I ended up doing it. But it's fine. It's fine. But really, what I enjoy, what gives me, and I don't, I make almost no money through Pika or even book sales, but I get a lot of joy fuel. I get a lot of joy knowing that I coached somebody today. I made a difference in their life, in their career. I really helped somebody. And frankly, my partner wants me to retire. Henry says, why don't you retire? And I said, he says, we have plenty of money. I said, I'm still having too much fun helping people.
Where I was going with that is this: you work with solopreneurs and sort of this whole idea of how do you create a business that is sustainable, scalable, solve some sort of a problem, and you're able to not work in the company for the rest of your life and actually just own the company as you were originally had intended. Is there, if you could for a minute, in what you've seen so far as a coach and kind of building Pika and working with all these solopreneurs, are there some undeniable, indefatigable truths about building a business that eventually enables you to become like you have done? Like when you look at people and you're like, you know what? If I had to distill this down to like three main points, if you want to eventually get out of your business so so you're not being run by it, what are there some three like kind of like codongs that you can share with me?
Being an entrepreneur and stepping out of your business is different than being a solopreneur. There's two very different career paths or objectives. Solopreneurs aren't looking to have a six-figure or seven-figure exit. They're not looking to sell that business. They're just looking to make a really good living on their own terms.
Hmm.
There's really no exit strategy for a solopreneur. Entrepreneurs, on the other hand, that is often the dream, right? To sell the business or exit. Or uh, there's years ago, I read this book called How to, now I forgot the name of it, Half Retire.
Hmm.
And his whole premise was don't sell the business, use it as an ATM.
Hmm.
So you have other people run it and you
Hmm.
still take a salary and you do the parts of the business that you enjoy and let that team handle everything else. And over time, that'll be worth more to you than actually the six or seven figure exit of a
Hmm.
sale.
That's
Focus
literally the process that I'm in right now.
focusing on the sale or
No, I don't want to. I don't know if I'm going to sell my company. I would use it as an ATM. I'm putting people in positions now that can
yes,
run the business for me, so I'm not always just caught up in all the minutia of everything.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
But that's hard. There's one part is time consuming and not as hard. The other part is hard. The time part that's not as difficult, but is time consuming is documenting your processes.
Hmm.
Now, years ago I was a pilot, and pilots live and frankly die by checklists,
Mm.
right? That's why there's a pre-flight checklist, there's an in-flight checklist, there's a landing checklist because you don't want to miss a step.
Hmm.
And so I set up my business with checklists. What's our vetting checklist? What's our onboarding checklist? What's our contract checklist? What's our subcontract checklist? What's our master services agreement checklist? We have checklists for everything and process flow. When does it go from one person to this person? Where's the handoff? And so we actually hired somebody, one of our own consultants actually, to do the process flows.
Hmm.
So we have it all documented. So that's important because it had to come out of my brain so it could be transferred to other people and they could all be on the same sheet of music, so to speak.
Mhm.
So that's difficult, but not impossible.
So create SOPs.
Yes, basically.
All right. So that's the first piece.
The
What
second
else?
piece is finding the right people.
Finding
That
the right
is the
people.
hardest part.
That is the
People that you
hardest part.
trust, people whose skills, you know, are best suited for whatever it is that you're looking for. So in my business, one of my longtime friends is also works in my business as head of talent.
Mm.
Would trust her with my life. We've been friends for 25 years. We grew our careers together, etc. However, I would love to turn this business over to her, but if she was sitting right here, she would be nodding her head. She sucks at detail, terrible at it. Like forgets to enter things into the dashboard and forgets this detail and forgets to proofread her email. And she's often moving so fast that she'll forget a key thing or she'll misquote something. She would be a terrible chief operating officer because she knows it. It's just the way she's wired. So there's certain parts of the business that we don't have her do
Yeah.
because we know that she'll screw it up. But she's brilliant at all the people stuff.
We can't underscore that enough. If you don't have the right people in the right positions, it is a recipe for disaster.
Yes.
That doesn't mean they're not talented. That just means that you might have them in the wrong position. I'm
Exactly.
working with a client right now, and he has this longtime employee that has been working with him for years, but he's making a shift in his business and sort of the focus and the problems that they solve, and the new trajectory doesn't necessarily fit this individual. So we're sitting here having a conversation, and we determined in our conversation that let's just have a candid conversation with this guy and sort of better understand what type of role he would like to play in this new company, as opposed to just saying, "Hey, we're sort of reached the end of our arrangement here. You're not going to be very good at this. Let's just cut tires." And it turned out that there was a whole different area that he was really passionate about doing that he had not been tapped into yet. So it was a win-win scenario for everybody. He gets to stay with the company, he gets to continue making money, the boss gets to find a different position for him, and just goes back to the age old adage of find people's talents and strengths and match them up proportionately with something that can add value to the brand.
And don't make assumptions. Don't
Oh,
assume
great.
that just because somebody has been in this particular role that that's all that they want to do.
It's sort of like a sports team to me when I think about that, the analogy of a sports team. Let's just are you familiar with any sport in particular that you're fond of? Let's just say soccer, because we've talked about soccer. You wouldn't, there's positions on a soccer field, right? So everybody's sort of good at a different type of position. You wouldn't put a goalie who's good with their hands to play at the top of the position of the field as a striker who is
Right.
responsible for scoring all the goals. So why would you put an accountant in a capacity of like sales, for example? And I see it a lot when I'm working with smaller businesses. They have the wrong people in the wrong positions, and we have to do a lot of shifting around and
Mhm.
like your puzzle, like you were talking about. Let's jump
Play
into
to your
that.
strengths.
Yeah, let's jump into that puzzle for a minute because you said a couple of things that eluded that you might have sort of some spiritual woo-woo to you around things. And I just want to dive into that because I'm a big believer in that as well. You said you were more like a puzzle, and I forget what.
My career is more like a puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, your career is more like a puzzle, and all these things sort of serendipitously have added up to this ultimate recipe of where you are today. Do you think that that's been by accident? Was just sort of was there some sort of magical plan that you think that is preordained for you to eventually be where you are today, or is that just sort of like it is what it is, and those were the experiences that you had?
A little of both, to be perfectly candid.
Hmm.
Um, that phone call that when I got laid off and I made that phone call to that former client and I said, "Hey, I got laid off. Do you need any help?" That changed my life.
Hmm.
That one phone call. And like I said, it wasn't premeditated. It was
Hmm.
just a gut reaction. I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should pick up some consulting work.
Hmm.
And oh, I'll call Rob. And so maybe there was a little bit of divine intervention in that. I don't know. But I have had some very strange coincidences in my puzzle mosaic career
Hmm.
that looking back, you're like, wow. that was very interesting that that happened at that time. So there was one particular one pops into my mind. I had just finished a project and I was about to go turn in my security badge. And I had some time to kill before I needed to be down there. So I went into TJ Maxx. And I was literally in the dressing room when my cell phone rang. And I'm like, hello, this, I didn't recognize the number. Hello, this is Liz. And he said, is this Liz Steblay? And I said, yes, who's this? And he says, uh, this is Eric Lloyd from Clorox, and I have your resume in my hand. Uh, do you still do independent consulting? And I said, yes, I do. What's on your mind? How might I be able to help? He says, oh, well, we've got this project, blah, blah, blah. Are you available? Can we get together and have a cup of coffee and talk about it? And I said, actually, yes, I'm about to turn in my security badge with my last client,
Hmm.
so I can be there tomorrow. We never found out how he got my resume.
Hmm.
He just had a folder in his desk where had resumes. So if he ever needed help, that he would go through literally hard copy resume. And I ended up doing several projects for Clorox after that.
Hmm.
Divine intervention, luck, I don't know.
I'm in that space of my life now where I'm sort of uncovering all of the untruths that we've been told about everything, and one of that is sort of this whole idea of spirituality and sort of becoming who you want to become and manifestation and all that sort of stuff. And I've had a lot of I've been experimenting a lot over the last few years and sort of like trying to create things out of nothing. And I will tell you that there is a lot of evidence for some of the stuff that we're talking about right now. And I know this is a branding podcast, so we won't go terribly into that rabbit hole. But my question around that is sort of around transformations. And I look at myself. I just turned 50. I look at myself, 25 years ago, 27 years ago when I entered the workforce and I did corporation stuff for the first 15 years of my life. And I look at the individual that I was 25 years ago and the individual that I am today, and there's, a bevy of experiences and people and places and things that have added to that. But I look at like, had I been the person I was 25 years ago and given everything that I'm doing now and everything that I have today, handed to my 25-year-old self, I don't think that my 25-year-old self would have been equipped in any way, shape, or form to manage any of the things that I'm doing now. And I'm
Nope.
just fascinated by the human journey and sort of, so I want to shift my conversation into that space. When you look at 25-year-old Liz and 50-something-year-old Liz, and you look at all the experiences in between those, are there some marquee moments and experiences you look at outside of the one you just shared that is like, holy shit, that completely altered the trajectory of my life?
I knew I wanted to go into consulting.
Hmm.
I'd been in corporate. I was actually working for the company Intuit, the makers of TurboTax, Quicken, QuickBooks. They don't
Hmm.
have all those brands anymore, but I was working there and loved the job, thought it was the greatest job in the world. But I'd already been there 2, 3 years and I had solved the problem that I was hired to solve.
Hmm.
And I was getting restless and bored. I didn't like maintaining things. I like fixing things, solving problems, building new things.
Mm.
So when something starts to get routine, I'm like, okay, now what's next? I need to go do something else. So I said, okay, I'm going to go into consulting. So I interviewed with the major consulting firms and I had an offer from Arthur Andersen and an offer from Price Waterhouse. That's how old I am. And I really kind of wanted to go to work for Arthur Andersen. I got convinced into going to work for Price Waterhouse, which became Price Waterhouse Coopers PwC. Within 9 months, Arthur Andersen imploded. They had the whole crisis. I can't even remember the whole story now, but the firm dissolved. And I had clearly made the right choice by going with PwC. And I was with PwC almost 5 years, but my daughter had been born and I couldn't deal with that big firm model anymore. There was a conversation that I had with a partner, and he says, "Hey, I missed you at the team meeting last night. The team meeting was at 6 o'clock." And I said, "Well, my nanny's off at 6, so I had to leave at 5 to be home by 6." But I talked to my friend Joe, colleague Joe, on the way in, and he told me what happened in the meeting, so I feel like I'm all caught up. And the partner said, "Yeah, well, this could be a problem because we really need you to be a part of the team." And I said, "Well, I, you know, nanny's off at 6. What do you want me to do?" And that was the moment I said, okay, I've got to leave this firm. So there's sort of certain nudges from the universe that are like, okay, time to do something else. But you have to have the awareness and the introspection to keep your eyes open and think, okay, what's not right here? Is this time to do something different? And see what opportunity presents itself. I've heard some expression, I know I'm going to butcher this, but there's no such thing as luck. It's just making your own luck, or opportunity comes at you many times a day, and you just have to have your eyes open, your arms open to catch it.
Preparation and planning.
Yes,
No such thing
creates
as
luck.
luck. Yeah.
There you go.
Enron, by the way, was how
I
Arthur.
thought it was Enron, but I couldn't remember.
Yeah, they were hiding all of the financials. They were butchering it and relabeling it and doing all sorts of non-stuff. They were cutting corners and hiding all sorts of fraud that Enron was involved in. And I don't remember how, but I actually worked for a company. They were shredding a bunch of stuff, if I recall. I actually worked for a bank out of college in New York City, and Arthur Anderson was affiliated with them. And there was a bunch of stuff. And I remember all of our executive team had to go through a bunch of the audits, I guess they were, that whoever was involved in sort of shutting that whole scam down. But yeah, what a mess that was. In terms of the transformation, though, I guess where I was going with that is these experiences that we have, and whether they're divine or not, and whether you have the self-awareness or not, sometimes because I've had a lot of experiences. I reflect on these sorts of things all the time, where I had those tappings on the shoulders. I had those not doors being open, but I wasn't self-aware enough, or I wasn't acutely listening enough to sort of be like in tune with what was happening. And over time, I've learned to like develop my intuition around that, right? And sort of see these things like the writing on the wall almost before it happens. But at 25 years old, that those are not the things that I was thinking about. And I always sort of go back to this quote: when the student is ready, the teacher will arrive, or the message will
Yes.
arrive, right? And Buddha said that, I think. And I could not put more uh, that could not be more appropriate for anyone on this planet than myself in that regard, because I've had so many experiences early in my life where I look back and I'm like, dude, what the hell were you thinking? But I wouldn't have been able to handle it in those times and spaces. So it's almost like I had to have the trajectory that I went on in order to sort of, I didn't, you
Become
should,
the person you
yeah,
are.
like exactly.
Mhm.
Like, why would you fast track those things? Because it's in the experience that all the wisdom and that I've gained through it. So, anyway, fascinating stuff. I'd love to further explore that with you. In terms of you and your business, you're kind of now your CEO. Have you noticed that how you run a business and how you operate philosophically has changed a lot over time?
Yes and no. I still have exceptionally high standards, and missed details or connections, or when a step on the checklist isn't done, still freaks me out.
Mm,
Like I get upset. Like we have this documentation, we literally have check boxes. So that hasn't changed. It's because that's about the execution.
mm,
It's wonderful to have an idea, but you need to be able to execute and complete something
hmm
and do it well.
hmm
So that part hasn't changed. What has changed is uh my own sense of drive.
mm,
So you were very nice to say, Liz in her 50s, but frankly, I just turned 61. And I'm in a position, the money retire, my best friends are retired, my partner's retired, my favorite people around me are retired. And they're like, Liz, come play with us. And I'm like, yeah, still don't want to do that, even
yeah.
though financially I can. And so my drive has changed. I don't work 40 hours a week anymore. Last year I averaged 22 hours a week. This year my goal is to get it down to 15 hours a week. So I'm sort of like inching towards retirement, but I still want my businesses to run without hiccups, which is
Yeah.
of course impossible. There's always going to be hiccups.
I call those value adjustments. Some of the things that were valuable to you before, and I don't necessarily mean moral values, but the values of things that you're fully in alignment with, that you believe in, is sort of shifting. Maybe
Yes.
whether it's because of success, or whether it's because of age, or whether it's because you've just had a lot of cool experiences in this mosaic that you reference. But it is interesting, and I think that people should definitely consider this whole idea around. And for me personally, whether you're getting into a relationship or a new business or trying to start a new business, you should clearly understand your values and how you want to
Yes.
show up in the world. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? And what are the gaps that need to be closed in between? And if you know what those values are, the things that you stand for, then you're better equipped, in my mind, to sort of manage that and mitigate anything that comes their way. What are some of your core values? What are some of your core beliefs that you believe in, whether it's
Yes,
whether
I
it's
actually did
personally or
uh,
professionally?
I did a workshop on this. Oh my gosh, and I think I was in my 20s. It was one of my first early jobs. In fact, it was back when I was at Intuit. For whatever reason, they sponsored this workshop,
Hmm.
whether it was an offsite or whatever. We spent a day digging into our values,
Mm,
and they haven't shifted that much over time, actually.
interesting.
So my top five values are family,
Hmm.
friendship, harmony, independence, and wealth.
Interesting. And you don't
They
think that those have shifted? And so you've done those recently?
The order has maybe shifted. Wealth isn't as important as it was when I was younger because now I literally have it,
Hmm.
but preserving it is important.
Hmm.
Um,
Well,
and
that's right.
actually, the subtitle of my book is Six Keys to Taking the Leap, Winning Clients, and Building Wealth.
What's
Yes,
the title of your book?
succeeding as a solopreneur.
That's amazing. And you've written one, or you have plans to write more?
Oh God, no, just the one.
You'll love this. I'm actually in the process of writing a book myself right now, and it centers around values and sort of understanding how you show up in the world. Because I also have a very interesting process that I have created over the years. And I'm like you. I've taken my mosaic of all these experiences, and this I'm on my fifth business now, and I've taken everything that I've done and all those lessons, the failures, and all the different things that worked and didn't work, and I've sort of culminated those into where I am right now. And I'm hoping that I'm gonna continue learning because, for me, I think that's if you stop learning, then life's over personally. But
Yes, that is one of my values as well as is the new adventures. But it's interesting when I published the book.
there it is.
There it
Get
is.
it in the screen. Let me see
It's
it.
in the
Beautiful,
screen.
beautiful.
When I published the book, it came out within a month of my 60th birthday, and I was exhausted.
Hmm.
And I thought, wow, this was more work than I thought it was going to be to get this book actually published. I'll
Hmm.
tell you that the hardest part about the book was the editing process. But anyway, so I finally give birth to this book, and I turned 60, and I had been through this whole spiral of reflection and exhaustion, and I went on a 2 week vacation to just like recharge. And I
Hmm.
realized that one of the reasons I was so exhausted is because I had been grinding for decades,
Hmm.
working my ass off for decades, and all of my hardest won lessons are in this book.
I love
So in the
that.
process of writing the book, editing the book, doing the audiobook, all of those lessons and hardships and tough times were very front and center for me. And I thought, I am tired of grinding and working so bloody hard. And it's all my best learnings are in the book now.
Hmm.
So maybe I don't need to work so hard anymore.
Hmm. Why'd you come on this podcast? What do you hope to gain from just more exposure? What are you looking to do?
I would love to build awareness for the book.
Hmm.
I mean, even more so than Pika,
You should have
right?
sent me a book. I'd have it front and center right now.
Oh, well, I didn't think of it, to be honest.
I look forward to checking it out, though. Congratulations on that. What would people say about Liz if you weren't in the room?
Authentic, caring, helpful, um, probably passionate about whatever it is that she undertakes.
And in the businesses that you are running and have run, perception is reality. What would people who have consumed your zone of genius as it pertains to professional, what would they say about your brand? What would they say about your business? What impact has it had on them?
What impact it has had on them. I'm thinking of the people specifically that I've coached and mentored through
Hmm.
Pika.
Hmm.
And I think one of the biggest things that I do for the people through that organization is help them develop strengthen their confidence.
Mm.
Because fear, uncertainty, and doubt holds people back from so much. We get so caught up in our heads. I call it the FUD monster, this little creature that sits on your shoulder, whispers in your ear. I know
Yeah.
we all have it, but when you're self-employed, it becomes larger than life. Or if
Yeah.
you're thinking of becoming self-employed, that FUD monster is going to keep you in your full-time job. Because who are you to start a business? Who are you? You don't know anything about negotiating contracts. You don't know how to price your services. Oh my God, do you need an LLC? How would you even do that? I mean, all of those questions. The FUD monster keeps people back from achieving their dreams and living the life that they want. That's probably the biggest value that I provide to people is
I
to
love
help them
that.
conquer that FUD monster so that they can go create the career of their dreams.
Fear is literally like the decimator of all opportunity. And if you can figure out how to conquer that and step into that, and I feel like I have through a variety of different ways, but you just talked about fear. What would you say to somebody who's unable to overcome fear? What are some things that you would do to help them overcome that space, whether it's launching a new business or meeting that new partner or stepping onto social media and doing a video? Like what is it what you would do about fear? What's your solution for that?
We touched on this a little bit earlier. We talked about self-awareness.
Yeah.
So I have a trick that I call name it and tame it.
Hmm.
If you can slow your thoughts down enough that you can literally hear what they are, and it would say, I'm afraid I'm going to break my neck by standing on my head.
Mm,
Okay, then you've named what it is.
mm,
Well, how can I study that? Or what can I do to strengthen my neck before I attempt the headstand? Or can I talk to somebody who is experienced at headstands and ask them about their technique? Which you start to unpack it, and how can you learn more to increase your confidence to overcome that fear? And then you've tamed it.
mm. I love
But you
that.
have to be able to slow your thoughts down. Most of us have thoughts going through our minds so freaking really
Hmm.
fast that
Hmm.
we can't really hear any of it. It's just a feeling. Well, I
Hmm.
sort of have a feeling I'm afraid to stand on my head.
Hmm.
Um, and that years ago, my own personal coach got me into this practice. People call it meditation or mindfulness. I literally just call it sitting.
Sitting
10
in
minutes,
silence.
sitting in silence, 10 minutes every morning before I
Mm,
get out of bed. And I really just try to breathe. But no, there's going to be thoughts coming through my head. That's fine. It's all part of the process. But that's where I get some of my biggest ideas, my flashes of inspiration. That's where I can slow my thoughts down and say, oh, that's what I'm afraid of, or that's what's holding me back. Or really
mhm,
more now for me, it's more about, oh, that's what I want to create, or
mhm.
that's what I want to do next. But having that 10 minutes of uninterrupted time to just listen to your own brain makes all the difference.
Yeah, I agree with you. Journaling is that for me as well. Materializing a thought that's kind of ruminating through my head, whether I'm toiling with something or a success around something or a challenge I'm trying to solve. And I just find like materializing it into like the ethos of the universe, like putting it on paper and like seeing it sort of scribble out in front of me, it just gives it a new meaning and a new I see all these little like tentacles that come from it when I start to write
Yes.
stuff
It's
down.
another way of slowing down your brain. Journaling is
Yeah.
another way of slowing
Yeah.
down your brain so that you can get clear and untangle those thoughts. And that's where the tentacles come from.
Love it. Liz, this has been a wonderful conversation. Unfortunately, we're coming up to our end of our day, and I really appreciate you joining us on the Brand Laboratory. It's been a really, really fun conversation. Thank you.
Well, it's not often that I tear up on a podcast either, but kudos to you.
Well, I don't know. It was a good conversation. Thank you. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
The easiest way is the landing page for the book, sixkeys.info, not .com because that was too expensive. So sixkeys.info can be the numeral six. You can spell out six, doesn't matter. Sixkeys.info. And from there, you can buy the book from, Amazon, Goodreads, signed copy. You can jump over to learn more about Pika, the educational organization. You can jump over to my website, learn more about me, but that's the easiest way, sixkeys.info.
Brilliant. And we'll put all that information in the show notes as well. So this show will be published on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Apple, Spotify. I think we're going on maybe 20 different networks now. So a lot of people have the opportunity to engage with that. So thank you.
My pleasure. And yeah, the important thing is unpack that fear and know that
Hmm.
you have the confidence to figure it out.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
You know, the thing that blows me away, every single episode I have with these amazing guests, there is so much information that you can glean to improve your life, to improve your business, to improve how you show up in the world. And Liz was no exception to that. This mosaic of experiences that she's had in her 30 plus, 40 plus year career and all the different opportunities that she has had and created for herself. It's just really an honor for me to be able to have and share this space with them. And I appreciate you for listening into the show. So if this episode today challenged you in any way or inspired you in any way, I would love to hear about it in the comments. You can drop a couple of notes right in there. If you are interested or know someone who is interested to be a guest on this show, I would love to hear from you. You can drop us a note there or DM me directly on any of these social channels. And let's get you on the mic, man. If you've got something cool to say and something cool to share with the world, you have an obligation to do that. So until next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay courageous. Keep pushing the bubble and keep building the brand you were meant to build. I'll see you on the other side. Thanks for tuning in to the Branding Laboratory. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Connect with us on social media for more branding tips and insights. And remember, your story matters. Until next time, keep building and sharing your unique brand story. I'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in to the Branding Laboratory. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Connect with us on social media for more branding tips and insights. And remember, your story matters. Until next time, keep building and sharing your unique brand story. I'll see you soon.